How Eberflus handled it at that time for that game was, I think, one of the things that throughout the locker room people talked about and were annoyed by.
Apparently, Caleb Williams did a cover story for Esquire Magazine.
He's in the cover. He's on the cover. And he did the interview in Copenhagen because his girlfriend's Danish. They went over there to visit friends and family. And he says, quote, his comments to Esquire were the first time he's talked publicly about the players' annoyance with Eberflus, though he said at Hallis Hall 3 days after the Hail Mary loss that right in that moment you're angry, you're furious that you lost, and you lost in that way. But he says in the interview, how Eberflus handled it at that time for that game was, I think, one of the things that throughout the locker room people talked about and were annoyed by. He also, this is new, he said, he told Esquire, I was so beat up mentally, physically, and spiritually by the late season losses. When I got home, I got in my bed, and I just dropped a few tears, he said. Williams said he hopes the struggles the Bears endured last season will help him this year. I think those losses were pretty important for me and my growth, he told the magazine. To go on a losing streak, to be in this position and be at the helm of it was definitely important for me. Just being able to see how I need to be when times are bad. I'm going to work my tail off to never be in that situation again.
So for every football player, every athlete, it doesn't come naturally for you to be at the top of your game in your first year. I know that when you're the number one pick, you have the spotlight on you, your team. There's a big spotlight on all of it when you're at that particular height in your career. We were hoping that the Bears would be good last year, but the thing is that the offensive line and the defense was not good enough, and Caleb wasn't good enough in his first year. But, Cap, we have to understand the learning curve, and this is what I kept preaching last year to you, is that you might be looking at Caleb Williams as a great quarterback someday, but there's a learning curve for everybody. Even for Patrick Mahomes, it was not easy. He didn't just roll into the NFL and was great. He had to work at it. Same thing with Caleb Williams. You know why he dropped a couple of tears? Because he's never been beaten up like that in his career.
Never.
High school, the several colleges that he went to, he never dealt with this. This is why I pointed out in the preseason and also during the regular season, him doing loop-de-loops behind the line of scrimmage, it was easy for him to be able to have 10 or 20 seconds back there, Cap, because he had the protection on the offensive line. He realized that the speed of the NFL is different from college. If nothing else, he realizes, yes, I have to get the ball out. Now, whether or not he gets better at that, we don't know. A head coach and a new coaching staff does not necessarily mean that Caleb Williams is going to be an all-pro.
That's correct.
But what I'm telling you is that for everyone, Cap, it doesn't mean the light comes on just because you put on an NFL jersey.
That is correct.
That's it. That's just it. He was shell-shocked, just like Justin Fields was shell-shocked the same way. Hey, Justin, you can't hold the ball at Ohio State like you did in high school or college. Now you're in the pros. You got to let that ball go. And he's still learning today. He's still getting gigs, but still having the difficulty of saying, Justin, you either got to run or get the ball out. And he still doesn't get it. So what I'm saying is that for some, it's quicker. But for others, it's a steeper learning curve.
Why do you think Justin only got $20 million? And we say only because starting quarterbacks in the NFL, what'd Sam Darnold get? More than that.
Yep.
What did Geno Smith get in his new deal? More than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Geno Smith's in the 40-something. Justin got half.
Yep.
And the Steelers didn't want him back. They could say all they the bottom line is they did not, or they would have signed him. They would have got a deal done.
It's funny you
want to come in and compete?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny you use those two quarterbacks. We talk about the light not turning on for everybody.
Sam Darnold took till this year.
Well, you mentioned Geno Smith, and everyone had that guy dead.
Bust.
Right?
And all of a sudden, he's killing it in Seattle.
Okay. And got better. And so for Caleb Williams, I'm not going to be the one to tell you, wait for another 8 or 9 years and he's going to get better. I just think that at this particular time, with the weapons that the Bears have at wide receiver, tight end, whatever they're going to do at running back, Ben Johnson, all the things, all the bells and whistles, the hope is that Caleb Williams realizes whatever happened in college was happening in college. You have to grow up and be a pro. And that's on and off the field. And so, yeah, he got his ass kicked because he had a defensive coordinator as a head coach that had no clue. And I gave Matt the benefit of the doubt, Cap. I said, here's a guy here, Eberflus, that could say, hey, I'm a defensive coordinator. I see your tendencies. When you do this, a defense is going to be doing that. And I gave Matt the benefit of the doubt because it's a mirror effect, right? I'm not an offensive guy. I'm a defensive guy, but I know what you're going to do. And I know the tendencies of a defense.
And I know how to defend you.
Right, right, which makes sense, right? Until it didn't. Until he got fired.
Fair.
And so here we are. Going through that piece, Caleb Williams is going to have to understand, hey, man, you've got it. You have spoiled riches. Look how many wide receivers you have. Look at how the improved offensive line with veterans on this offensive line. So what are you going to do about it as a quarterback?
I think it's not just for him, though, either. Like the way he says the team was annoyed. We were annoyed with the way that was handled and calls out Eberflus. And that's the first time anyone, I think, outside of the Jalen Johnson stuff, and even that was behind closed doors in the locker room, it feels like the first time anybody's just come out and said, yeah, he did things that annoyed us. You're going to lose games. And nobody thinks Ben Johnson's going to go 17-0. People don't even know if he's going to go 10-7. You will lose games. I think the important thing here is hopefully now you have a head coach who won't be equally shell-shocked when you do lose games, who will understand something happened, we lost, and we have to respond from it, rather than what Eberflus did, which was pin the blame on a certain person, refuse to take any accountability, say we did all these things right and this one thing went wrong.
Yeah.
I think now the hope is you have a coaching staff that'll be willing to self-scout and will say how we handled play X wasn't right. How we handled play Y, we got to do that differently. That's on us. We'll figure that out. And you won't have the spiral that happened after that loss.
Sounds like accountability, Shay. But sounds like what you just laid out as accountability.
But don't you think if Eberflus had handled things with Tyreek Stevenson differently, like coming on with us, he did apologize. No, coach, he didn't. He sent a tweet out. And then the next day, all the blowback, he ends up, all right, you're not going to start the game, but you're in quick. It's got no teeth to it.
I actually think the worst thing he did was say the previous play didn't matter.
That was the worst. I agree.
Any other coach in the league would have come out and said, yeah, we should have done that differently. And those yards did matter.
And they would have put it on themselves. They would have said, guys, this is on me. But didn't Dan Campbell do that? Yeah. I lost that game.
And even beyond just standing on a podium and going, that's my fault. Whatever. You can do it. You can not do it. I don't know that it makes a change. But the idea that he goes, that's the way we played it. We'd play it that way again. I think that probably is the thing that most annoyed players in that locker room. Because you had Kevin Byard going, we shouldn't have done that. We should have pressed. We should have played straight up defense. We shouldn't have been in prevent on that play. We gave up free yards. And the fact that Eberflus is like, no, we did it right. That's the way we're going to play it. That's the way we'll play it next time. I think every person in that locker room hears that and goes, well, what are we supposed to do, man? Really?
Yeah. Because it starts at the top.
Let's go, Mike.
And if that is the person that's leading you, then you need a different leader. And that's why the Bears made that change for the first time ever in season.